guys, it's Don from Soundsphere magazine and Gimme A Hull Yeah. Just had a wonderful chat with Effy about GCW, about music, punk rock, loads more. It was so much fun. One of my favourites I've done for a while. So much energy and good vibes. I'm really looking forward to you guys checking this out. Thank you so much to Effy for his time. And yeah, hope you enjoy this. Check out some GCW and check out Effy. All right. Cool. So yeah, starting off, you've had some time off for a bit. How are you feeling today? You've been resting.
I think the weirdest thing about having chunks of time off more than necessary or more than I'm used to is that things that are hurting in my body become more apparent. When there's a general sense of soreness sort of all over me, you don't notice the things that are probably a little more worrisome during those periods. But as your body cools down and as you sort of fall back into going, okay, I'm at a standard here, what's really bad, it sticks out a little more. So it's concerning, but also like, it's necessary for me to take a little bit of a breath back because like I think I was trying to pop myself by looking up when my last full weekend off was, and I think it was Easter was
Okay.
when I was like truly like had a full weekend off. uh Not even by choice. Nobody's running great on Easter, man, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And obviously, you're in GCW at the moment. I got to check out your match. You had a match with Matt Cardona, which was heated, intense. How are you feeling about working with GCW at the moment? How are they treating you?
I think it's been really fascinating because as a team, things have grown increasingly larger at a very rapid pace. And with kind of a minimal staff, you know,
Yeah.
they've been able to pull off some really miraculous stuff that I think is pretty true to kind of DIY and the punk roots. And when I look around at the multiple jobs people pick up to sort of make sure the ship keeps rolling. You know, we look at a card like they had Saturday night the other day, and there's a lot of big names on that Saturday night card, but that whole weekend GCW had been putting on shows with other promotions where there were a lot of wrestlers in the building that were working that double duty, that were working all day at these shows, helping with tickets and security, and having that sort of DIY team that's on the same page of moving forward and putting on really good wrestling. It's been really exciting, but I think all of us are kind of like, hey, what do we got to do? What do we got to do to make this happen, to make sure that, you know, when the show goes live, when the things are live, when the show's going on, that we're putting the best material out that we can, because we clearly have we have the ingredients here.
Mm.
And then now it's the matter of gaining that distribution and then using that distribution to our advantage. Because you take something like a SmackDown or even an AEW or an Impact product or Ring of Honor, they have these TV distribution deals that are giving them money on a different scale, where it doesn't necessarily, whether it is or not, have to really be over or provide on every time because they have long scale contracts on this. Whereas
Yeah.
our model is we're pay-per-view based. Every show is our best show. We have to put out the best product every time. If you are on the block, give everything you need to, but recognize your role and find your place. And when you look at these companies that have bigger TV distribution deals, that have more of that money coming in, they have a different sort of boss to appease at the end of the day, where they are still garnering fans. They are still picking up live ticket sales, but our lifeblood is giving it every time to make sure that you're getting your pay-per-view money worth, because with more shows coming up, with more things happening, we've got to be able to put that forward. And now, like, kind of looking around and capitalizing on that, I think there's going to be a really big period of growth where hopefully we're doing some things that are more revolutionary than people expect. And hopefully, we're going in a direction that is kind of unheard of, rather than, oh, well, here's obviously what the next step would be. You're going to get a TV deal or do this. I think there's bigger platforms now and bigger ways for us to get across. And there's an audience that doesn't mind that HBO Max rated content that we're able to provide. And we're not betrothed to any of these sponsors in a sense that holds us down. But it is like, hey, let's make sure we're getting the most out of this, because America's watching. People are watching all over the world. The industry is watching at a very high level, and we've got to be able to show that, like, hey, there are different ways to do this than what's been done before, you know?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I think it's a very punk rock way of looking at it, and I certainly got that vibe from GCW. And you yourself, you've got a background in bands as well. You've played in bands before. I mean, how did playing live and playing in bands and being a part of that community, absolutely, being a part of the sort of punk rock community and being in bands, did it help you at all when you kind of went into wrestling and became a performer and put your heart and soul on the line in a different way?
Yeah, I think I'm always someone that's looked at the larger picture, where when you're on tour with a few bands and a few guys, and there's different people with different roles, we're going into these new places, we're going into completely new ventures and new venues and new towns, but we are the same cohesive group, and the whole show has to run with the whole show. And when you come into wrestling with that mindset versus like, I have to just go in and get myself over, I'm doing my match, against, hey, this is an entire show and I'm going to do better personally if we all do well, having that band mentality where you're all in this as a team and the whole night needs to go a particular way for things to work and for us to come back and for us to make the money on the road. In wrestling, some guys, it takes them a little longer to get to that path of we're on the same team in this journey, in this venture. But once they kind of understand that, you know, that growth is unlimited because communication is the key to how all this happens. We're a big grassroots movement in independent wrestling. And I hope I can be a little bit of a torchbearer for that kind of spirit, and seeing that the more people go out and talk about what we're doing, the more promotions that talk about what's happening with people around them and using people in their community versus trying to be the next PWG or whatever it may be, we're able to assist in that. We're able to lift that up across the board. And that's the punk rock ethos of like, we don't need the TV guys, you know, to get where we need to go. If it's real and good and true at its core, then the word will spread on its own because, you know, truth to power, you want to share the information about things that you think are great or cool, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting with you because it doesn't seem like you're, in previous interviews, you know, you're not chasing anything. You're very comfortable with the punk rock thing. You want to push, you want to grow, and you want to develop, but you're comfortable in it going at your own pace. You're not saying, I'm trying to get to WWE, I'm trying to get to AEW. You're like, I'm going to choose a different path. And I respect that you're comfortable in that, because some people really, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about success in a minute and what that means to you. Because some people really get hooked up on, I've got to be here, I've got to be doing this. And you seem to be comfortable building, comfortable grafting, comfortable working, you know, for the, you know, just building your own thing and forging your own path, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I always joke that I'm holding the machete in the front of this little like jungle exploration. Yeah. And you know, you got to do a lot of work up front with the knife. You got to, you know, there might be snakes, there might be bugs. There's a lot of things going on. You're kind of cutting through the jungle. And, you know, granted, you get the freshest fruit first if you're willing to do that upfront work. But the people who follow you are going to get some pretty close goods, you know, that are there. And I've got people with me, and having that kind of trust and assistance along the way to be able to poke those bubbles and go, look, I wish that you guys could present me something that sounded like it would creatively fill my bubble. But the stubbornness in me says, I think using my contacts and my methods and my education that I can do things better for myself than you can. And so far, taking that bet every time, there's always been naysayers, or will always be naysayers, but thank God someone's there to knock me down a peg, because when I've taken these bets on myself, I've seen exponential growth in my career in ways that someone else may not have guided me towards. And I think we have to kind of take off the rose-colored glasses in a sense in wrestling sometimes, because there are people who had very high success rates in a particular time, in a particular place, in a particular company. And these things are impressive. But giving that credence to a particular now and a future and a different time and distribution and way of enjoyment of wrestling, and the way information travels being so different, and the way people are motivated to move into a live sense, like this is big brain stuff that I think about. If we're not getting with this time, there are probably things you did that will still be applicable to today. But there are probably pieces of advice you're giving me that are not the best pieces of advice, because if you did that well in wrestling, you wouldn't still be here Asianing matches as a mid-carder that didn't actually draw tickets and was very proficient. The people that are giving the advice right now aren't necessarily the peak of the peak. Like Hogan is kind of canceled by most of wrestling, but he's also not pulling guys aside and going, here's how you really make money in the business, because he's just trying to protect his smog dragon horde and get away from things and not spend anymore at this point. But you've got a lot of guys who weren't necessarily ticket draws or pay-per-view draws in this business that have stuck around a long time and found comfortable livings. And I think we get thrown off course and into things that provide for good professional wrestling, but not great professional wrestling, and not great television, which is what our biggest competition is against now. All these internet streaming services, you know, Snapchat has shows now, Facebook has shows, YouTube has shows, Twitch has a big following in a lot of different categories. There's all the streaming services. There's so many ways to get in front of people now that, and pardon my French, you have to just find what makes them give a fuck. And if you're getting advice that isn't making people react to you, then you've missed the core of what our entertainment industry is, which is this physical theater that is meant to garner reaction through how we are acting and telling and storytelling and stunt diving and everything in between. We've lost our path a little bit. And I've started joking with guys to stop wrestling like Hunter's watching on the other side of the camera. Stop wrestling like these guys are watching. If you get the people in a room who left their house, who got off their fucking couch, who got off their Netflix, who left their dog at home, who left their beer in their fridge to come and pay more and have more discomfort to get to watching you wrestle, when those people are behind it, who have put more on the line to be there, the stream will get behind it too, because that translates. But instead, we're trying to do this impressive dance where we're showing our skills off instead of remembering that, like, we are hired live performers. Let us do the best at that we can.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I think that translates a lot to my next question in terms of, because you were able to build a brand and you were able to build something and basically live your dreams on your own terms. And I respect that about you as a performer, as an artist. One of the things I do as part of my day job is work with young people who, they're interested in music, they're interested in the arts. One of the things I get quite a lot is I'm really struggling because of my identity. So a lot of people are LGBTQ, for example. Myself having a disability, I work with a lot of people with disabilities, and they struggle with their identity and they're afraid to take the steps. They might want to work in music. They might want to be a wrestler. I've had a couple of times where they want to wrestle and they want to work out how to do that. Now, what would your advice be? And I know we've got to be careful about the word advice because everybody.
Yeah, for sure. No, but this is an easy tackle, man, because I think the best way we have to look at it now is instead of pushing kids towards any one identity, we've got to take the shackles and sort of back things off and take the pressure off and take the weight off of making those choices at such a young age. Bringing more examples into light of people who came into their own at later times, people who had different paths of success. And I think that's why wrestling is so interesting, is because there are so many of us now that are from a very diverse background. And when you look at everyone's path to get where they're at, it's all very, very different. And it was different steps along the way. And so to kind of take the pressure off of like, hey, when you're 16, you probably don't need to know what you're doing with the entire rest of your life. You will probably go through many changes. Our advice is to explore the world, take things in, enjoy what you enjoy, find the things that bring you, happiness, and find things that keep you interested. And having that sort of mindset versus if you don't take path A or path B, you're going to get stuck on path C. And that's not where you want to be. So make a choice. These are such heavy pressures on a person. And when we are learning more, especially like, not to compare the two in identity, but I've learned a lot more about the neurodiverse community and people with autism and people with Asperger's and people who struggle and trouble with neurodiverse issues that they are overcoming and finding the gifts in as well. I think when we open ourselves to learning about ourselves in an objective way and saying, what may come to me, let me accept it. And I said this to a wrestler the other day, the worst thing we can do is argue with ourselves about who we really are. That's the worst thing we can do. Yeah. And when other voices are coming at us, giving that negativity or feeding in that that's not really you, that's not who you really are, that's not really what you want to be, that's not the life you want to have. When these pressures are coming in and we reflect them with our own voices, you're up against a literally one-on-one identical enemy who is going to hit you at every point. You can always argue with yourself, but sometimes you got to stop arguing and you got to say what's on your mind to yourself. And that's a big step. And I know that was kind of a jumble of words, but really it's like, it comes down to when we take off the pressure to box ourselves in, I think identifying ourselves in ways for people to understand us quickly is great. But when we open ourselves to saying, I feel this way now, but I don't know what road I'm on or what path I'm on. Let that be open. Let that be wild. It will save you a lot of heartache in the end if you don't feel like you're stuck to something. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think it's good advice. And talking about the paths, people are on and how it's changed and developed. How would you say you've changed from the beginnings of your understanding of yourself as a performer, from being in bands to becoming a wrestler to now? Like, how have you changed? How has your understanding of yourself changed over the course of your career? Where are you at now versus where you were then?
It's such a silly answer, and it's such an old man answer that I feel like I'm giving. But there is less rage in my heart that is
Yeah.
guiding what I'm doing. And not that there is less passion or less fire or fervor or energy towards things, but I am not necessarily guided in all of my decisions by this rage that I didn't really know where it was going to. And as you sort of travel the world and meet thousands of people and see everyone's different journey and struggle, you obviously mellow out some and you start to look at yourself better. And now that I am sort of understanding of what was setting me off or making me angry, what was sending me in this direction, what was sending me towards self-destructive behavior, when I'm able to identify that and then put those same energies and those same passions that were this rageful guidance that a lot of times tripped me into really good things, but I probably would have had better successes if I wasn't guided straight by that anger.
Yeah.
And now knowing that if you guide that same anger energy in a way that is a positive force and uplifting force, that is still like at its core, it's a fuck you spirit, but it is also the fuck you spirit of fuck you. I'm going to do this so well that you have to do it too.
Yeah.
And you better get on board because this is the best thing going. And that's the energy versus I'm going to do this to spite you, which is never a way towards success. You will learn this. You can argue with me on this. Anyone can, but it's not true. You will never find you're in success through that anger and rage. And I'm glad to say now as like a grown adult, like I'm a 31-year-old. And I think that's like, I hope I can give better advice to some of these people. I've lived through a lot of things. I've seen a lot of stuff happen. And there are people coming into wrestling now who are very young. You know, I look at Billie Starkz. I booked to fight Billie Starkz on her birthday. She's had a huge takeover year across the board, done a ton of wrestling. She has her parents on the road with her. She is in a safe environment. We are all looking out for Billie Starkz. And when you look at the end of the day, you go, okay, I'm a 31-year-old man who has a lot of experience in the world. What are the best things I can do for Billie Starkz right now? What are the best things I can teach her that I would have wanted to know at that age that aren't jumping all the way ahead or jumping all the way in to get ready to mortgage a house or something, but saying, hey, here's what I would have wished I was keeping track of at this time. And here's the things I would have wished that, you know, someone told me were easier ways to get money in or easier ways to plan things. And when you have multiple people backstage who are veterans in their own class and in their category, looking out for these younger talent across the board, it makes for such a better locker room. It makes for a better show, and it makes for utilizing these people's talents in ways that they may not have gotten to 5 or 6 years down the line on self-discovery on their own. And they don't have to trust us 100%. They don't have to come with us 100%, but we want to at least be there to go. If you want to bounce ideas, if you want to talk to us, if you want to ask advice, if you have something weird going on that, you know, you're not trying to go to your dad and be like, this is something I'm dealing with. We want to be able to be there to say like, let us guide you in wrestling. Let us tell you where we've messed up, and let us at least set you up for success the best we can, and leave it to you to put in the effort, but leave it to us to at least go, what are we doing if we walk away without passing this information on? We're doing nothing.
Absolutely. So you've got to take that chance and that opportunity to pass on that, you know, part of yourself. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it sounds really selfless, but in the end, if you truly believe that these people are going to be around in our business for the next years and years and years, you know, the mountain goes up, the mountain goes down. Why not have good relations with the people who are going to be ahead in this business too? It doesn't cost me anything to say, here's what didn't work for me. Here's what worked for me. Here's some guides. And down the line, they go, you know what? Effy was someone who looked out for me genuinely. Effy was someone who tried to do, you know, the right thing in business, tried to look out for the right people, put people on in new ways, and they'll look out for me in the end too. And that's hopefully the game. And a lot of guys find out on the way back down. They never saw that coming. Who would have guessed that you'd be up and down in wrestling? They're faced with having to come back with a lot of that. You know, it almost sometimes feels like the 12 step where you've got to go back and go, if I wronged you in any way, I'm very sorry. And I'm starting over. And we don't want that kind of relationship. We want to go, if you're doing great in wrestling and succeeding at a high level, hell yeah. If you're on the way down, hopefully I can get you a booking and we can at least get your skills showcased out again or something. You know, it's both sides of the coin that you hope is repaid to you, even though you're going, oh, I don't need that right now. We will all need a little assistance down the line one day, you know?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's that community feel and helping each other out. I like it, man. I like it. And I think that's, you know, that kind of comes, you know, we've danced around success. We've brought it up a little bit. What is Effy's, straight up, like, what is Effy's relationship with success? What is your understanding of it? What does it mean to you? Because again, like I said, we have talked a little bit about it. You know, you're not trying to go the straightforward path that everyone tries to go to. You're trying to do, you know, the DIY punk version. But what is your relationship to success? Because people always say to me, Like they're like, oh, I want to be like Effy. I want to do that. I want to be on a pay-per-view, but I'm never going to be that kind of does. That's the kind of conversations I get. I'm never going to get there. How do I get there? How do I look? How do I look that way, etc., etc. And then their perception of success is skewed, if you know what I mean. So, what is your perception of success?
It's such a balance right now, because obviously in a year like this, I've had a lot of really like huge career defining moments, like consecutively and one after another. And they're big things where like there are a lot of people finding out about Effy for the very first time, but Effy's been going full time since 2014. And it is a culmination of these things where you've seen the worst of the worst and the best of the best yourself. And you get to sort of take in all of these moments as mindfully as possible to say, this is objectively something that is looked on with success. And this is very cool, or this is a moment that very few people get to have. And so I got a mustache hair in my mouth, dude. So I also have to say that like my true definition of success is a little more narrow than where I have to place it because of the life choices I have, which is I have a domestic partner husband. We got to go legally do this thing because they're killing me on the health insurance.
Yeah.
And I have a dog and I have a family and I have a household and he has a job and we have a life together. But if it was just my narrow measure of success, it's to be comfortable enough to continue asking questions and having the resources to answer them.
Nice.
And that first question was sort of, can I get in a ring and bump in a ring? I was coming out of sort of a quick little rehab incident when I began professional wrestling, and getting in the ring and taking bumps and going, okay, I'm a real person and I feel sore. Baby success, but it is success. Getting on your first show and getting in a match and having a real life match, training for all that time, all of these little successes, you have to take every single one of them a step at a time and go, now, it's a huge success that I ended a 10-year reign of Matt Cardona's Internet Wrestling Championship. And it's a longer reign than Bruno Sammartino, a lot less defenses, but objectively, it's a longer reign than Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah. And
I have to say that. So when I measure all of these successes, I take them all in with as much joy as I can. But I also know that the true success for me is to go, okay, well, I've gotten to this level. I've gotten here, and not to wipe away what's already happened, but now I was able to sell enough shirts and a few 8x10s and get paid on these shows well enough that I can answer the next question and the next question. And it is good that the government lets me legally register as a business, because I'm allowed to take weird business risks on my own questions of what is real in wrestling, what is not, what is the next level, what is not. I have a lot of people supporting me on Twitch, and that helps out tremendously, because now I have the space to go, what does a wrestling show I put on look like? What is a particular wrestling stream of highlighting certain wrestlers look like? There are bigger questions that I can answer and bigger steps I can take when I have this sort of mobility to move around that comes from this. Obviously, success in the business and what will be written in the annals of history, but also the financial success of going, if I have this at this level and I'm able to maneuver because I have the sort of money lubricant on either side of me to make these things happen, it's cool because I'm doing it from a place of true discovery. And I really want to like see what is possible and see what wrestling can be. And I'm putting myself in the successful position to do that. So like, there's success. Success is the ability for me to keep going and keep going even higher up to see what's there.
Absolutely, man. So what do the next questions look like for you? It's a bit of a veiled, what does the future look like? I know that's a lazy question, but we'll phrase it as what are you questioning at the moment? What do the next questions look like for you?
So, right now looking into 2022, I have been, and I have to keep everything hidden, but I've been a very patient girl this year. Okay. I'll put it that way. And I hope that a lot of things will continue coming to light and make their way forward. But there's not going to be really a shift in what I am doing wrestling wise. I'm going to continue taking as many wrestling bookings as I can. All the discomforts I had of starting in Florida are gone now. Whereas I get on a train, I go to the airport, I go where I need to go. I am provided the airfare to do that. I am provided places to stay. I am put in a position to succeed now, and I want to do that as much as possible. But I will be sort of entering a new brain sphere for a lot of people and coming into my own in a few different ways that are different to where my career has gone so far. And I kind of want to see what that can bring back to wrestling, not to be a greedy little pig. And it's exciting to have new opportunities in the world, but to sort of be able to say, here's what this little bit got me over here from this world. What can we do to bring that back to wrestling? How can I bring more people to our wrestling shows? How can I put more people in front of professional wrestling? Because I'm of the true belief that like it is the core art form of human theater. Like, this sounds big brain, but it's what I really think.
Go for it, man.
It is the core art form of human theater. And when you're live in person with professional wrestling, there's no other thing like it in the world. And it's hard to deny when you're in that position. But the big conversation has been convincing the people to come out. And you know what, though, this year, thank God, some people feel safer to come out. I know coronavirus is not over. I know it's not done, but a lot of people have taken the steps to vaccinate and are willing to wear the mask to the shows. And it's been really exciting because this is my first GCW. This is my first death match. This is my first Effy match. This is my first wrestling show. This is my first time out of the house in 2 years. These are big things that we're hearing from people who weren't with us before this pandemic. And we've been able to get to them already in a kind of new way by adapting. And now I want to see if we can put our money where our mouth is and bring more people out to say, look what we're doing. I don't see a ceiling on it. I would like to see you push us even to our limits of, can we handle this kind of growth? I want to see that next level of it.
Absolutely, man. So, and just before we, like I said, I've got a few more questions. I'm going to do a couple of music questions to finish off. But just before, you've got a history, like you've spoken in interviews about how you've had to call people out in the past for sort of unacceptable behavior, either in locker rooms or out when you've been at events. And one of the questions I get asked a lot by the young people that I work with is they're a little bit nervous because maybe they've gone on an internship for the music industry, and the music industry's rife with it, but also maybe their LGBTQ plus identity isn't being seen or understood. Even though they've educated and informed, people aren't supporting them, and they feel a lot of nerves around that. And I wanted to ask you where you found your voice and the confidence to say, because it's not always easy to do. This is wrong. Maybe change this. This needs to change. Because being the voice to do that might put you at risk. I think that's what happens a lot. Why it gets brought up to me is they're afraid of the impact on their professional development, personal development, what people are going to think, what people are going to say. And I wanted to get your thoughts on how you found the strength to take those risks and to risk, your professional, personal reputation by calling some people out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I feel this, and I think the responsibility goes back onto those who have the privilege and those who have the ability to make things more comfortable and more safe for that discussion. I can't go here and say, here's how you're going to be less scared to confront what you're dealing with, or here's how you're going to be less scared to deal with people who are not being understanding to you. But I think there's a combination, obviously, of I went to a 4-year public college. I saw a lot of wild shit. I worked for 7 to 8 years at a moving company, and I worked on the trucks before that. I think I counted the other day, and I've been inside of almost 6,000 people's different houses, if you count all of the houses I've ever been in through the moving industry. So I've seen all sorts of people's lives. I had real world, job things that I had to do, whether it be hiring and firing and crazy stuff, where if you look at me now, you're like, this rock and roll star. No, baby, I was real business life. And all of these things coming into wrestling, I was coming in as a grown adult who had seen a lot of the world already, not all of it. And I've learned a lot since then, but also I was coming in not as a kid who these were the first adult figures or teacher figures or boss figures I'd had in my life, or these professional wrestlers who aren't of, the best moral field all the time. And so when you come in with all of this real world experience and you go, in my business, I have to operate at a moral level, and I have to operate to my business's acceptable level of how we are. And if we discover things, and if there are certain things that happen, there are things you have to do, whether you like it or not, to make the changes. And when you come into a world where all those rules are kind of out the window and you're going, hey, this doesn't look right to me, and this doesn't look right to me. And I'm also starting in the Southern American United States, where I'm a 6 foot, 6'1" in the boots, 200-pound male. I'm white. I realize the privilege I have. I am a gay man, but I also have a lot of privilege. And when people would yell slurs at me, yell horrible things at me, accost me, I was able to not only use my mind to be witty enough back at them and bust them down and even send some of them out of the room, but I also was never physically threatened by them, and I would get in their face. And that is encouraging to people who say, I may not have that same ability or privilege, or I may not have that strength in me, but it is good to see someone pushing that hate back, or pushing that hate away, or pushing that behavior into a different place. And some people said, did you have a lot of homophobia in the locker rooms? And I obviously I dealt with some homophobia in locker rooms, but what I found more was people went to me to lean on because they had never had someone like me to talk to who was comfortable in my skin, who was comfortable being a homosexual male in a locker room full of pro wrestlers, looking around going, folks, obviously a few of you have concerns because we're all wearing glitter and spandex. Please line up and talk to me if you have something you want to discuss. But coming earnestly to people like this who have never had someone they could turn to in this world and putting people on blast who are not going to live by that behavior, you have to grow to that. And the way we have to take it on is to go, hey, this is extra responsibility and this is extra I'm going to have to look out for. But the repercussions of us not looking out for these things or paying attention or calling out these things now is so much bigger down the line when you look at how many people's careers can be affected and how many people can live in suffering of abuse when they don't feel comfortable telling people.
Yeah. So it is about putting it out there, you know, and sort of pushing back. I think that's the key message, is pushing back where appropriate to kind of let people know that this stuff isn't acceptable and building that kind of community around you of because I guess you were that person in the locker room, you know, to help that trust and that support.
But the thing too is we've had a lot of cats come into this business too who have had those same, oh, we're going to do so great, we're going to make wrestling better, and they've been pieces of shit. And so I understand people's apprehension. I even ask fans nowadays, I go, have apprehension about all of us. God, ask your questions, put your nose to it. You know, I want people to be able to look into who we are. If we can't overcome that level of kayfabe where people are allowed to background check us or look into things or vet things people have heard about us or look into our history, if we're not comfortable overcoming that level of kayfabe, we're not very good at professional wrestling. I can still suspend disbelief in a room as Effy in the zone, whether or not you know that I'm William Taylor Gibson, and that is the name my mother gave me, and I was born on June 7th. These things can be verified by fact, and you can look into people, and they can still be characters that we as fans are not going to feel stupid going, it's good to know we checked on some things with people. It's good to know we looked into things because we've had concerns and we've been blindsided before. I'm glad that we can now suspend disbelief more comfortably because we have that level of comfort. It's really... It's an easier art form to go back to our fans and go, guys, we want to do things as safely as we can. Seriously. Because we fucked it up before, you know, and stuff getting under the noses of people that were in our own locker rooms. It's like, now I feel vigilant about this shit because I don't want anything getting by me anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's the accountability.
And performing is a privilege. Entertainment will always be a privilege. I don't care what you say about it's art, it's a job, it's this or that. The ability to be able to functionally perform for people an act of fancy for their delight and jolly on a Friday night, guess what? It is not a God-given right to do. And people have the right to be informed about what's going on so that they can make informed decisions with their money. People are not stupid who are coming to professional wrestling shows, and they deserve to be informed. And we don't do that all the time.
No, absolutely, man. It's really good to talk to you about it. Some quick fire music questions then, because again of your background in bands. Give me your top 5. Have you got a top 5? It's like the worst question.
My music taste is so weird compared to like I'm a huge Billy Joel mark.
Nice.
Like I'm Paul Simon forever.
Yep.
This is like what I'm saying is horrible right now, and I'm just being honest with you about what I'm going to put on the playlist. And the truth is, I'm also probably going to put on a lot of Elton John, true to form.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. The other day, we went to shoot in the Hammerstein Ballroom, so I can talk about this. And this is where, like, I listen to a lot of, like, diva music, okay? And you know what I mean by that. Like, diva music. Like, so they said, you know, what... I jokingly was saying, I'm not a building mark. I'm not a building mark. Right. It's the Hammerstein Ballroom. It's incredible. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Some of the biggest wrestling moments in the world. But I've, of course, got to be a little contrarian. I'm not a building mark. They go, well, think about a show you may have seen here or a show you may have recognized with here and just try to put that joy in your heart. But all I could think of was Patti LaBelle and Mariah Carey doing It's Got to Be Real live in the Hammerstein Ballroom, sold out. Patti LaBelle bringing Mariah on stage. To me, like that kind of music, too, is incredible.
Yeah.
But I've also I go through phases where I will rocket through a freaking discography heavy on a band for 2 months, and then I will dissipate on them forever. Like I did that the other day with Metallica. Probably 3 months ago, I was only listening to Metallica or like weird synth music. And but now like I'm not putting any of it on and it's there and I've retained the information and I'd probably go see him in concert. But I do this a lot of times where like in the end, I'm addicted to information and I have to hear everything. And so like, there's a lot of weird, diverse eclecticness, but sometimes you got to go back to the classics.
Absolutely, absolutely. What about? So that you may have answered the question. Favorite bands to see live?
Um, Listen, I've been trying to go back to more like pop punk shows recently. I'm doing Fest Wrestling this year again. They have come back, and Fest is in full force. And obviously, I'm very excited to go see the Wonder Years. So I remember seeing at one WrestleMania in New Orleans where Seth Rollins was side stage. And the other day, I got to teach a class at Seth Rollins' class. So there's like a weird Wonder Years
Awesome.
Kevin Bacon trio with me in the Wonder Years and Seth Rollins that we're going to figure out. And I'm excited to kind of go velge back into these punk rock bands. I know my friend is really looking forward to seeing like Crime and Stereo and some of those. I call them a little crustier, but they're not crusty at all. But it's sort of that there's a vibe.
Yeah.
And you have to go in with that energy. And sometimes I can't match that energy. But come Fest Week, and I'm trying to get back into my pop punk roots. I went and saw Thrice the other day.
Nice.
I saw what is this? State Champs. I saw State Champs.
Yeah.
And I went, I would have been wrong because there's still money in this kind of music. And I would have guessed after about 2012, there wasn't. There is. There's big money in State Champs. People are fired the fuck up over State Champs.
It's back, man. Pop punk is back. It's thing. Grunge has come back round. Pop punk as well. Absolutely.
I'm in. I'm totally sold.
Absolutely. Okay, so just before we finish up, in terms of people that haven't discovered you yet, you talked about a lot of people finding Effy for the first time. Like I knew of you, and then I watched one of your matches more recently, and I was like, yeah, this is so cool. It's exciting. It's interesting. It's different. The look, the vibe. What is your message to people that haven't seen you before? Yet to discover the wonders of Effy. And also, I guess, to long-time fans and people that have got behind you and will stay behind you.
At its core, I think a lot of people will go, Effy's the gay one, or Effy's this one, or Effy's that one. What I've always tried to make Effy is the culmination of what I think pro wrestling is. It is showy, it is flashy, it is story-based, it is hardcore, it is hard-hitting, it is serious, it is goofy, it is stunts, it is wild characters. And I hope when they watch that, they catch that joy that I have for wrestling and that. And if they're going to look back on matches, thinking up to Fest, sorry about that. Thinking up to Fest coming up, there's a few Fest matches that I think got me very comfortable with intergender wrestling too. One versus Leva Bates, where she is completely dressed like me. And then another versus Sue Young, which is the first time, not to spoil it, I captured the Fest championship. And I think both of those are definitely worth a look back. If you have not seen Effy or heard of Effy and are just jumping in now, I obviously look a little different all the time, but that's the variations of Effy and the variations of wrestling. And I give a lot of answers for what Effy means, but sometimes just to poke at Vince a little, I tell him it's the F and the E. WWF was cool and hardcore and crazy and wacky and had a lot of swerves and stunts and characters. And the WWE is a public-facing, strong brand globally that is polished, able to speak, able to give out public relations information, able to handle itself, and able to be visible and transparent to shareholders. And I, darling, am both the F and the E. So eat it up.
Beautiful,
because it's a full fucking meal.
Beautiful. You can tell your PR background, Effy. Absolutely. And before we do the PR bit and the plugging and the things that are coming up, you may have done a little bit of that. I'm going to squeeze an extra question in that I haven't phrased it this way before because I always use it for bands. It's a sillier question, but if you could describe yourself through musical terms, like a Frankenstein's monster, so like the balls of Elton John, the left flipping foot of Nina Simone, or something like that. The Frankenstein's monster music, it doesn't really, I don't know whether it works in this context, but if you could describe yourself in a music, like the head of State Champs, go on. Here's what I want. Go on.
I want the daredevil spirit of Gwar.
Nice.
With Freddie Mercury's boldness. But I want the lean back of Julian Casablancas and the angry disposition of Homeboy from Modest Mouse. Like I want that snarl where it's towards everything, but I'm still kind of cool and I'm still real in your face and flashy and bravado, but I'm also covering you in blood and shooting a big Satan's cock at your head.
Beautiful. You smashed that, man. That was great. I know I can do that again now. That's awesome.
It works.
Yeah, good. Right, the PR bit. Go on. Right, what have you got? What's coming up? What can you tell us? You've talked a little bit about it, a little bit about stuff that's coming up. But is there anything you want to plug? Anything you want to tell us about before we finish?
Yeah. So my first bit of public voice work, I'm on this podcast called the Luchador Pod, and it's like a story podcast. And I play a precocious white man who became the mayor of Mexico City and tries to lean on this magic power fighting luchador for his own gains and benefits. So check that out. It's on the podcast. Everywhere I am is Effy Lives. So on Twitter, on Instagram, on Twitch every Monday at 8 p.m. And on Pro Wrestling Tees, it's Effy Lives. And if you go to effylives.com, you can book me to do whatever you want, put it in the thing, put it in the forum. My people get it. They handle everything. It's how we're here now. It's magic. I will say this too. Wrestling is Gay Part 3 going to be popping up soon. Wrestling is Gay has been a huge success this year. Since January onward, people are wearing it all over the place. We will be back. We will be rocking it. I want to put the events over though. And this is where it's crazy because sometimes I overwhelm myself if I say all the events out loud, but I am doing this weekend, freelance wrestling in Chicago, Illinois on Friday night, October 22nd. And then October 23rd, I'm fighting Psycho Clown in GCW, Los Angeles, the Ukrainian Cultural Center, which I want to say this. Ricky Shane Page, Eddie Kingston, Too Cold Scorpio, the SGC, and now Psycho Clown. I've faced a weird array of opponents in the Ukrainian Cultural Center if you really stack that shit up. After that, though, it is Fest weekend. The 30th, I will be at Fest. The 31st, I'm working on something special. We're going to see what happens for Halloween, if there can be a spooktacular surprise. And then after that, I'm working for Championship Wrestling from Atlanta versus Mucha Lucha Atlanta on November 7th, which is going to be crazy. I've also got some more dates coming up in November. I can't remember everything all at once.
It's all right, man. I'm excited for you. And obviously, we're in the UK quickly. For UK fans, is there any chance we can see you in the UK?
I'm coming. I was supposed to come last year for like a week, but I've already discussed it with the hubby. I don't want to do the UK disservice and I don't want to miss anyone. And I want to hit all the places that I want to hit. So I'm going to try to come next year for at least 2 months is the goal right now, is to go, look, here's the 2 months I'm doing it. Y'all better fill this motherfucker up. This is what I'm going to be here and making it happen because I don't want to miss anything. I want to hit all the spots. And my mom loves the UK so much. She goes every year to the UK. And so maybe I can coincide that with my mom getting to come to a UK Effy show because she's bought every one of my t-shirts. She's like #1 fan, amazing. Ultimate.
That's amazing.
It's incredible.
Is there anywhere you'd really like to go? Anywhere you've got like earmarked you really want to go?
Yeah, my mom really enjoyed what's the big city in Wales?
There's Wales, there's Cardiff, there's loads, there's so many, man.
Look, I don't want to miss out. Here's the thing. I'm such an old bummy redneck and I live only in the southern US and now I've got to travel a little bit around this country and see a lot of the United States, but I've never spent time in the United Kingdom at all. So I want it all. I went to Spain. Too many siestas for my taste, but if we could fill those with tea times, I think I could rock this shit out pretty heavy.
Okay, man. Well, we look forward to seeing you, Effy, for sure. And thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure to speak to you. I can't wait to see you when you come over, man. Looking forward to you coming.
Yes, hopefully soon.
All right, take it easy, man.